Hello everybody out there. Today I am talking you through the results from last week's Telos Tribe Retrospective, where we set the scene talking about mindfulness at work, at home, and the crossover between. So, it was great attendance, and thanks again for everybody who was there last week. Always a pleasure to speak with the Telos Tribe team, and we always have a really great conversation. This week we spoke about mindfulness. So some of you may know last week I spent some time at a meditation and yoga retreat and came back very full of mindfulness and wanted to bring that into the conversation about the retrospective. So I asked the group what is working and what's going well in regards to mindfulness at work, at home, and the crossover between. So right now, people are feeling like they're being mindful of our space and others. So what we mean by this is that through the time that it is right now with workplaces changing and work habits changing, people are becoming more mindful of having personal space and others' personal space, and that kind of linking into the people personally learning about the need for personal and work boundaries. So they're going through a process of learning all of this. We've become more patient because of our circumstances. So the conversation we had about this is just understanding that we may not have been as patient when we were talking about just being in a workplace, but by being thrown into a situation where everyone has to change very quickly, we're seeing a lot more patience across our teams, across ourselves. The next thing was becoming okay with letting go of control. So those guys who were on the retrospective with us reflected and said that they were finding that it was they themselves and others around them were being okay with letting go of control. Learning to focus on personal well-being. So this is not just from a personal point of view. We had a discussion around personal well-being becoming more and more of a topic of conversation, which is excellent. And it's very important. I deal with a lot of people that go through burnouts. It's very good to hear that the conversation is going outside of just what I know and into being more of a global business conversation around well-being. Like I said, globally, more mindful of communication as well. So when we talked about this, we're talking about how individuals are being thrown into having to think a lot harder about how they communicate, whereas we might have been able to go into the workplace and just pick up a conversation with one of our colleagues. Now we have to think about our conversations. So thinking about how we're going to form them, how we're going to continue them in a digital world, in a distributed world. So we're having to be more mindful about that. And that's, spanning on to paying more attention to our communications. So we're having to focus on replacing body language and context and tone through digital. So organizations are being more mindful as well. So they're using more data instead of finger in the air. So, those we had on the team, on the meeting, said that they feel like their organizations are having to turn away from asking for people's opinions on things because it's just not as easily available, to actually using data, so capturing conversations, capturing data points to make more decisions. And there is a general sense of appreciation. So appreciation for each other's activities, their time. I feel like the conversation around this was that people are being more mindful of each other's time, and they're also appreciating their time. So there's a lot of thankfulness around that. Now the last one was good leaders are changing their rewards. So we're talking about one of our team members was reflecting on a reward system that they used to have in place, where it used to be a work from home as a reward. Obviously that's not a big reward anymore because their entire organisation is working from home. So they've actually changed one of their one of their rewards into getting an Uber Eats voucher. So yes, so now moving on to what is not working. So again, talking about scene setting, mindfulness at work, we're talking about at home and the crossover between. So what does mindfulness mean to us? What does it mean to our organisations, to our teams, to our to the business landscape more globally? So what is not working? Those who are in the call felt that the definition of mindfulness is not widely known. So really, mindfulness, we had a bit of a conversation on this. Mindfulness is really about, thinking about thinking. But the definition of mindfulness is not necessarily shared between those in a team. And it's also not widely known as to what it really means. And so some people take advantage of what they think mindfulness means. Some people inadvertently take advantage, not meaning to. So there's just really, a conversation to be had around what mindfulness means. The boundaries between home and work are becoming very blurred. Now I hear this a lot. This is about, working from home, trying to blend that with work, and by being at home, those with families in particular, they find it very hard to disconnect from the home life, disconnect from the activities that are at home. Whereas when they were at the workplace, they could totally disconnect from it, and there wasn't a priority. So now they're having to find that they have to juggle those priorities in between the day, just because they're there, and they need to be mindful that others around them and their family, and your home is expecting more from you. So there's lots of messages of uncertainty and fear. So this is, widely outside of just the workplace, but also in the workplace as well. There is a lot of messages of uncertainty, and that's not useful to, at least to the crew who are on the workshop with us on Friday, because it with fear comes fear. Fear breeds fear. Uncertainty feeds uncertainty. And it's making it very hard for people to be mindful of what they're doing when there's an underlying fear and uncertainty. We're off the back of that, we're talking about being bombarded with unfiltered news and information. So there is a lot of information and news about COVID, about the economy, about what's the effects going to have on things, and we've talked about people are trying to communicate and talk more. So what's not working out of this communication is that people are getting a lot more of that unfiltered news, and that's very hard for people to become mindful when in the back of their mind they're being bombarded with this negativity and this uncertainty. And because it's unfiltered, it takes a lot more thinking and activity to process that. So it affects your mindfulness. It affects your ability to stop and think and stop and not think even. Sadness when losing face to face. So some people are actually quite sad. We discussed this, and it is sadness as opposed to anxiety or anything like that. We talked about this being, it is for some, it is actually sadness, and sadness doesn't help with being effective, doesn't help with being good employees. So just being aware of this is, like I said, being mindful of sadness, being mindful that others around us are being sadness is something we took away from this conversation. Being at home makes priorities of home and work blend, so we spoke about that already. Not taking breaks, so we spoke about there being a bit of a habit among some of the people on the call around actually not taking breaks as much as they did before. Now this is specifically for those who have been moved into a work from home bracket. They're not taking the breaks, they're just working straight through, and that's because they feel like they need to work hard. So there's new project kickoff anxiety. So the finding consistency and way to talk to people. So in previous, prior to work from home scenes, there was generally, when we're talking about, there was generally a project kickoff was everyone was there. It was all face to face. Everyone got to know each other. But now there's an inconsistency with that and how people start off a project, and it actually affects the entire project through. Ineffective meetings. So mindfulness, taking away from everything that's happened with COVID and everything that's happened with work from home and changes to the economy and business structures, ineffective meetings are still happening. Now I've heard this for years and years and years. People not setting the tone for a meeting or setting an agenda, just sticking a meeting in a diary and expecting those who are invited to turn up. But then not necessarily setting the tone once they're in the meeting, so people are sitting there going, do I need to be in this meeting or not? Not even setting an agenda, just going straight into a conversation. So again, being mindful of this is really great. So if you haven't been setting an agenda for a meeting, or if you're not setting the tone at the start of a meeting, please be mindful of these. And the last one here was we've forgotten about the small things. So talking about the big issues, the big problems. Everyone's focused on trying to keep the business chugging over. Trying to deal with a massive amount of change. And there is a lot of the dropping the balls of the small things, and those small things are starting to erode away some of the quality factors. This is what we talked about here. Small things like just the small processes that may have been used in the past before any of the massive change we've all gone through, them getting dropped, it's then eroding the quality factors. So cool. So then moving on to what can be improved and what are the next steps. So again, talking about mindfulness at work, mindfulness at home, and then the crossover, and being mindful about the crossover between the two. So what we said as leaders we can do is pause and appreciate the small things in life. So take time out. Understand that it is just work. It is just a day-to-day job. There are some small things in life that we take for granted that will actually pep us up and make us feel happier, more resilient, and more certain about life. So take a step back. Keep in contact with everyone we feel close to. So don't lose contact to those who may not necessarily be in our work circle. So maybe there were those who you used to work from the office that you bumped into that you never actually worked with. Have a bit of a think about who those people are, and did they mean something to you? And if they did, try to bring them back into your life, bring them back into your work circle. Keep in contact with them. Asking more "Are you okay?" questions. So just generally caring about each other. There's nothing wrong with asking, "Are you okay?" at any day. It doesn't need to just be that one day a year that we ask, "Are you okay?" We should be asking it more often. Journaling, sketching, or creativity. So taking on some more non-goal based activities. So this is talking about outside of work, even in work if you can possibly make it work, but doing some of those non-goal based activities. So this is to try and combat some of that working without taking breaks. Trying to break that up, trying to break up the momentum, trying to take a step back and do things that don't include a goal. Ask people what mindfulness means to them. Just by asking someone what mindfulness means, you are making them mindful, and you are being mindful that your mindfulness is different to their mindfulness. So start that conversation. Reaching out to people, to the HR, people and culture managers, and talk about mindfulness. So if you feel like there's not enough mindfulness in your organization, reaching out to those people who generally have influence or responsibility over things like mindfulness. Personally, scheduling and prioritizing break and activities into the day. So spread that idea wide. So if you're working from home now, scheduling in a little bit of time to maybe go for a walk, get out in the garden, go down the street, get a coffee. Potentially it's about scheduling in time to get some of your house activities out of time, but not letting them blend into your day accidentally, and not feeling guilty about doing those things. So scheduling them in, thinking about actually doing them at the start of the day. Don't just let them turn into being something you do to procrastinate and then potentially feel guilty about. Schedule them in. So peer-led well-being challenges, i.e. the step challenges. So if you're in a busy workplace and you've got multiple people and potentially some of you are working from home, some are going to the office, you're not getting that same relationships that you might have gone through before, or maybe you're just really super busy. Trying to get outside of work and doing those peer-led well-being challenges. So step challenges is great. A lot of us have pedometers. Putting out a step challenge to say, who can do 10,000 steps a day. Consistently gets a prize, or even just challenge no prize. team camaraderie kinds of things. Maybe it's a bake-off, maybe it's a something like that. Bringing those well-being challenges back into the office, even if it is at home. Starting a conversation about meeting agendas. Please, please, please. I would love to hear more meeting agendas. Having mindfulness themed days. So Mindfulness Monday, for example, is something I've just implemented. And last but not least, trying different ways to do things you know you need to do. Okay, i.e. 5 pages today, 10 tomorrow. So instead of procrastinating and getting away from the things and getting busy into the others, be mindful about the fact that if there's something that needs to be done, getting started on it is better. So if you're stuck in getting started on something, maybe just break it down, do it small, do it change. So be mindful about the way we do things. And that concludes the overview of last week's retrospective. I will post up this and a summary of the actions to take, and hopefully I will see you next week on what was the date for the next one? Next week, 2 weeks from the 25th, so that'll be, oh my goodness, I can't find the calendar. I will post the date up as to when that next retrospective is going to be. I'm going to post up another quiz as to find out what we want the scene to be for the next retrospective, and hopefully I will see you all there. Thanks a lot. Bye.